he ordered his troops to freshen up, eat a quick meal, and march. That afternoon, the two armies finally found one another on the plains near Carrhae. The Roman army lining up for battle at Carrhae comprised of 7 legions at its core, totaling roughly 34,000 legionaries. Accompanying this significant force were 4,000 native auxilia and 4,000 light cavalry, 1,000 of which were the Gauls brought from Caesar by Publius. Their Parthian enemy was a completely alien force from a totally different military tradition. Cyrenius brought no infantry at all to the battlefield, constructing his army as a direct counter to Roman strengths in close quarters. To this end, 9,000 horse archers armed with short compound bows made up the majority of his army, while 1,000 heavily armoured cataphracts equipped with heavy lances formed the flower of Parthia's nobility and freemen. As the Romans caught sight of their adversary, they would have seen a numerically weak force, barely armoured at all. This was yet another ingenious ploy by Cyrenius, who had cleverly concealed his numbers by hiding the depth of his army behind the width of an advance guard. In addition, he had ordered the army's cataphracts to wear robes above their armour, so that any observer would see them as just regular cavalrymen rather than the truly lethal heavy knights that they were. Encouraged into battle by his son, Crassus marched to meet Cyrenius's army in battle, thoroughly unaware of the danger he truly faced from the utterly prepared Parthian army. At first, Crassus arrayed his troops in a long extended line with cavalry on each wing to prevent encirclement. However, he changed his mind at the last minute and reformed his forces into a square formation before advancing, probably in an attempt to give the Roman army strength on all sides. Now, to the terrifying battle roar of Parthian drums and bronze bells, Cyrenius led a full-scale cavalry charge against the Roman square, with cataphracts in front and horse archers behind. As they did so, the Parthian general gave the order for his cataphracts to cast away their concealing robes, simultaneously revealing their true nature in an attempt to damage the morale of the enemy. Unaffected, and with their typical iron discipline, the Romans locked their shields and braced for the charge. However, just before the impact, Cyrenius's cavalry peeled around the sides of Crassus's square, quickly encircling it with a swarm of highly mobile horse archers while the cataphracts pulled back and regrouped. A short-lived attempt by the Roman light troops to break the flanking maneuver was immediately met with a storm of arrows, forcing them back into the square. With their enemy pinned, the mounted archers began unleashing a barrage of arrows upon the Roman square from all sides. Used to dealing with arrow fire, the legions employed their famous testudo, confident that their heavy armour and shields could weather the storm. However, it quickly became clear that the unfamiliar barbed arrows used by the Parthians, as well as their powerful compound bows, were shockingly capable of penetrating Roman protection. As the horse archers loosed volley after volley into the enemy square, the Romans began to suffer losses. Even as this went on, Crassus must have felt hopeful despite the rain of missiles. Once the horse archers emptied their quivers, he must have thought, the enemy horsemen would have to attack him close up or withdraw. The triumvirate was in for a nasty surprise. Cyrenius now revealed the most cunning part of his plan. A mobile rearming train of 1,000 camels carrying vast stores of arrows was sent out behind the Parthian cavalry. So long as the mounted archers resupplied at different times, and so long as the camels were evenly spaced, the barrage would continue indefinitely. If Crassus, having realized what was happening, did not make a move now, the Romans would be killed where they stood. With a mixed force of 4,000 cavalry and legionaries, Publius was ordered to lead a breakout. His contingent charged out of the square, causing the Parthian horsemen in front of it to retreat almost immediately. Not wanting to lose the momentum his surprise attack had gained, Publius pushed further, right into Cyrenius's counter-trap. As his retreating foe withdrew, they shifted in the direction of their regrouped reserve of cataphracts, which now charged with their lances. The maneuverable mounted archers now turned on their pursuers. The impact was devastating. As Cyrenius' elite heavy cavalry engaged the lightly equipped Roman horsemen, the resurgent horse archers fired into their flank and into the mass of incumbent legionaries. It was all too much for the outgunned Romans, and they fled defeated to a nearby hill and locked their shields, ready to make a gallant last stand. Publius, determined not to desert his command, ordered one of his soldiers to kill him. All resistance on the hill now collapsed, and a final thunderous charge by the Parthian cataphracts at last destroyed this isolated unit. Back at the main force, Crassus had a decision to make. He could either retreat and leave his son to certain death, or advance, risk his whole army and hope to save him. He chose the latter. They had not gotten far when a cloud of dust and the beating of war drums drew Roman attention, followed by the head of Publius mounted on a lance. At this horrifying sight, Roman morale finally broke. Cyrenius employed his favourite tactic again. The cataphracts charged, the Romans tightened their formation, and then the horse archers encircled, showering the square with arrows once again, slowly bleeding the army to death until dusk ended the assault. At nightfall, the Parthians withdrew and camped nearby, leaving a devastated army behind it. Only 20,000 of the original 42,000 Roman troops remained to fight, but many were injured. Crassus was immobilized with grief and loss, so the two surviving senior officers, Cassius and Octavius, led the survivors in retreat to the town of Carrhae. The men who were too wounded to walk were ruthlessly left behind. During the march, panic would periodically take hold, and the Romans would form up for battle before settling down again. Eventually they reached Carrhae and were brought inside the city, still counting around 15,000 men. When dawn broke, the Parthians slaughtered the 4,000 injured men who had been left behind, and continued on to find Crassus. Cyrenius would not let him escape, but he did not know where he was. Eventually figuring out he was in Carrhae, Cyrenius went there, but realized Crassus had fled into the hills. He was subsequently found and ignominiously killed by Parthian soldiers after being tricked into faux peace negotiations.